I have never known a father fail to acknowledge his son as his own, no matter how scurvy or crook-backed he may be. It is not that he fails to see his infirmities, but the thing is his for all that. The same applies to me. I can see, better than anyone else, that these writings of mine are no more than the ravings of a man who has never done more than taste the outer crust of knowledge. Even that was during his childhood, and who has retained only an ill-formed, generic notion of it, a little about everything and nothing about anything, in the French style. For in brief, I do know that there is such a thing as medicine and jurisprudence, that there are four parts to mathematics, and I know more or less what they cover. But what I have definitely not done is to delve deeply into them, biting my nails over the study of Aristotle, that monarch of the doctrine of the modernists, or stubbornly persevering in any field of learning. I could not sketch even the mere outlines of any art whatsoever. There is no boy even in the junior forms who cannot say he is more learned than I am. I could not even test him on his first lesson, at least not in detail. When forced to do so, I am constrained to extract something concerning universals, against which I test his inborn judgment. A subject as unknown to the boys as theirs is to me. I have fashioned no sustained intercourse with any solid book except Plutarch and Seneca. Like the Genets, I am constantly dipping into them and then pouring out. I spill some of it onto this paper, but next to nothing onto me. My game bag is made for history, rather, or poetry, which I love, being particularly inclined towards it. For, just as the voice of the trumpet rings out clearer and stronger for being forced through a narrow tube, so too a saying leaps forth much more vigorously when compressed into the rhythms of poetry, striking me then with a livelier shock. As for my own natural faculties, which are being essayed here, I can feel them bending beneath their burden. My concepts and judgment can only fumble their way forward, swaying, stumbling, tripping over. Even when I have advanced as far as I can, I never feel satisfied, for I have a troubled, cloudy vision of lands beyond, which I cannot make out. I undertake to write without preconceptions on any subject which comes to mind, employing nothing but my own natural resources. Then if I chance to come across in excellent authors the very same topics I have undertaken to treat, I acknowledge myself to be so weak, so paltry, so lumbering, and so dull compared with such men, that I feel scorn and pity for myself. I do congratulate myself, however, that my opinions frequently coincide with theirs, and on the fact that I do at least trail far behind them, murmuring here, here. And again, I do know the vast difference there is between them and me. What I myself have thought up and produced is poor, feeble stuff, but I let it go on, without plastering over the cracks or stitching up the rents which have been revealed by such comparisons. You need a strong backbone if you undertake to march shoulder to shoulder with fellows like that. Those rash authors of our own century who scatter whole passages from ancient writers throughout their own worthless works, seeking to acquire credit, thereby achieve the reverse. Between them and the ancients there is an infinite difference of luster, which gives such a pale, sallow, ugly face to their own contributions that they lose far more than they gain. There were two opposing concepts. Chrysippus, the philosopher, intermingled not merely passages from other authors into his writings, but entire books. In one he cited the whole of the Medea of Euripides. Apollodorus said that if you cut out his borrowings, his paper would remain blank. Epicurus, on the other hand, left 300 tomes behind him. Not one quotation from anyone else was planted in any of them. The other day I chanced upon such a borrowing. I had languished along behind some French words, words so bloodless, so fleshless, and so empty of matter that indeed they were nothing but French and nothing but words. At the end of a long and boring road, I came upon a paragraph which was high, rich, soaring to the clouds. If I had found a long gentle slope leading up to it, that would have been pardonable. What I came across was a cliff surging up so straight and so steep that I knew I was winging my way to another world after the first half a dozen words. That was how I realized what a slow I had been, floundering through beforehand, so base and so deep that I did not have the heart to sink back into it. If I were to stuff one of my chapters with such rich spoils, that chapter would reveal all too clearly the silliness of the others. Reproaching other people for my own faults does not seem to me to be any more odd than reproaching myself for the other people's. We must condemn faults anywhere and everywhere, allowing them no sanctuary whatsoever. Yet I myself know how valiantly I strive to measure up to my stolen wares, and to match myself to them equal to equal, not without some rash hope of throwing dust in the eyes of critics who would pick them out. Moreover, I do not take on those old champions all at once, wrestling with them body to body. It is a matter of slight, repeated, tiny encounters. I do not cling on. I merely try them out, going less far than I intended when haggling with myself over them. If I should prove merely up to sparring with them, it would be a worthy match, for I only take them on when they are toughest. But what about the things I have caught others doing? They bedeck themselves in other men's armor, with not even their fingertips showing, as it is easy for the learned to do on some commonplace subject. They carry through their projected works with bits of what was written in ancient times, patched together higgledy-piggledy. In the case of those who wish to hide their borrowings and pass them off as their own, they're worthwhile of their own to show off, so they try to recommend themselves with someone else's goods. Secondly, it is stupid to be satisfied with winning by cheating the ignorant approbation of the crowd while losing all credit among men of understanding. Their praise alone has any weight, but they look down their noses at our borrowed plaster work. For my past, there is nothing that I want to do less. I only quote others the better to quote myself. None of this applies to centos, published as such. I have seen some very ingenious ones in my time, including one under the name Capalupi, not to mention those of the ancients. Their authors show their wits in both this and other ways, as did Justice Lipsius in his Politics, with its industriously interwoven erudition. But that is as it may. I mean that whatever these brutalities of mine may be, I have no intention of hiding them, any more than I would a bald and grizzled portrait of myself, just because the artist had painted not a perfect face but my own. Anyway, these are my humors, my opinions. I give them as much which I believe, not as things to be believed. My aim is to reveal my own self, which may well be different tomorrow if I am initiated into some new business which changes me. I have not, nor do I desire, enough authority to be believed. I feel too badly taught to teach others. Now, in my home the other day, somebody read the previous chapter and told me that I ought to spread myself a bit more on the subject of children's education. If, my lady, I did have some competence in this matter, I could not put it to better use than to make a present of it to that little man who is giving signs that he is soon to make a gallant sortie out of you. Having played so large a part in arranging your marriage, I have a rightful concern for the greatness and prosperity of all that springs from it, quite apart from that long enjoyment you have had of my service to you, but which I am indeed bound to desire honor, wealth, and success to anything that touches on you. But in truth, I know nothing about education except this. that the greatest and the most important difficulty known to human learning seems to lie in that area which treats how to bring up children and how to educate them. It is just as in farming. The plowing which precedes the planting is easy and sure. So is the planting itself. But as soon as what is planted springs to life, the raising of it is marked by a great variety of methods and by difficulty. So too with human beings. It is not much trouble to plant them, but as soon as they are born, we take on, in order to form them and bring them up, a diversity of cares, full of bustle and worry. When they are young, they give such slight and obscure signs of their inclinations, while their promises are so false and unreliable that it is hard to base any solid judgment upon them. Look at Simon, Temestalis, and hundreds of others. Think how unlike themselves they used to be. Bear cubs and puppies manifest their natural inclinations, but humans immediately acquire habits, laws, and opinions. They easily change or adopt disguises. Yet it is so hard to force a child's natural bent. That explains why, having chosen the wrong route, we toil to no avail and often waste years training children for occupations in which they never achieve anything. All the same, my opinion is that, faced by this difficulty, we should always guide them towards the best and most rewarding goals, and that we should attach little importance to those trivial prognostications and foretellings we base on their childish actions. Even Plato seems to me to give too much weight to them in his Republic. Learning, my lady, it is a great ornament and useful instrument of wondrous service, especially in those who are fortunate to live in so high an estate as yours. And in truth, she does not find her true employment in hands base and vile. She is far more proud to deploy her resources for the conducting of a war, the commanding of a nation, and the winning of the affection of a prince or of a foreign people than for drawing up dialectical arguments, pleading in a court of appeal, or prescribing a mass of pills. And therefore, my lady, since I believe you will not overlook this aspect of the education of your children, you who have yourself tasted its sweetness and who belong to a family of authors, for we still possess the writings of those early default counts from whom both the present count, your husband, is descended, and you yourself, while your uncle Francois de Sieur de Condé gives birth every day to new ones, which will spread in awareness of this family trait to many later centuries. I want to tell you of one thought of mine which runs contrary to normal practice. That is all I am able to contribute to your service in this matter. The responsibilities of the tutor you give your son compromise many other elements which I do not touch upon, since I have nothing worthwhile to contribute. As for this one subject on which I do undertake to give him my advice, he will only accept what I say in so far as it seems convincing to him. The son of the house is seeking book learning, not to make money, nor for external advantages, but rather for those which are truly his own, those which inwardly enrich and adorn him. Since I would prefer that he turned out to be an able man, not an erudite one, I would wish you to be careful to select as guide for him a tutor with a well-formed rather than a well-filled brain. Let both be looked for, but place character and intelligence before knowledge, and let him carry out his responsibilities in a new way. Teachers are forever bawling into our ears as though pouring knowledge down through a funnel. Our task is merely to repeat what we have been told. I would want our tutor to put that right as soon as the mind in his charge allows it. He should make it show its mettle by appreciating and selecting things, and by distinguishing between them. The tutor should sometimes prepare the way for the boy, sometimes let him do it all on his own. I do not want the tutor to be the only one to choose topics or to do all the talking. When the boy's turn comes, let the tutor listen to his pupil talking. Socrates and then Arcellus used to make their pupils speak first. They spoke afterwards. For those who want to learn, the obstacle can often be the authority of those who teach. It is good to make him trot in front of his tutor in order to judge his paces and to judge how far down the tutor needs to go to adapt himself to his ability. If we get that proportion wrong, we spoil everything. Knowing how to find it and to remain well balanced within it is one of the most arduous tasks there is. It is the action of a powerful, elevated mind to know how to come down to the level of the child and to guide his footsteps. Personally, I go uphill more firmly and surely than down. Those who follow our French practice and undertake to act as schoolmaster for several minds diverse in kind and capacity, using the same teaching and the same degree of guidance for them all, not surprisingly, can scarcely find in a whole tribe of children more than one or two who bear fruit from their education. Let the tutor not merely require a verbal account of what the boy has been taught, but the meaning and the substance of it. Let him judge how the child has profited from it, not from the evidence of his memory, but from that of his life. Let him take what the boy has just learned and make him show him dozens of different aspects of it, and then apply it to just as many different subjects, in order to find out whether he has really grasped it and made it part of himself, judging the boy's progress by what Plato taught about education. Spewing up food exactly as you have swallowed it is evidence of a failure to digest and assimilate it. The stomach has not done its job if, during concoction, it fails to change the substance in the form of what it is given. Our souls are moved only at second hand, being shackled and constrained to what is desired by someone else's ideas. They are captives, enslaved to the authority of what they have been taught. We have been so subjected to leading reins that we take no free steps on our own. Our drive to be free has been quenched. They are never free from tutelage. In Pisa I met in private a decent man who such an Aristotelian that the most basic of his doctrines is that the touchstone and the measuring scale of all sound ideas and of each and every truth lie in their conformity with the teachings of Aristotle, outside of which all is insane and chimerical. Aristotle has seen everything, done everything. When that proposition has taken too widely and unfairly interpreted, for a long time he has had a great deal of trouble from the Roman Inquisition. Let the tutor pass everything through a filter and never lodge anything in the boy's head simply by authority, at second hand. Let the principles of Aristotle not be principles for him any more than those of the Stoics or Eutychians. Let this diversity of judgments be set before him. If he can, he will make a choice. If he cannot, then he will remain in doubt. Only fools have made up their minds and are certain, for doubting pleases me as much as knowing. For if it is by his own reasoning that he adopts the opinions of Xenophon and Plato, they are no longer theirs, they are his. To follow another is to follow nothing. We are under no king. Let each man act freely. Let him at least know what he does know. He should not be learning their precepts, but drinking in their humors. If he wants to, let him not be afraid to forget where he got them from, but let him be sure that he knows how to appropriate them. Truth and reason are common to all. They no more belong to the man who first put them into words than to him who last did so. It is no more secundum Platonum dem secundum me. Plato and I see and understand it the same way. Bees ransack flowers here and flowers there, but then they make their own honey, which is entirely theirs, and no longer thyme or marjoram. Similarly, the boy will transform his borrowings. He will confound their form so that the end product is entirely his. namely his judgment, the forming of which is the only aim of his toil, his study, and his education. Let him hide the help he received and put only his achievements on display. Pillagers and borrowers make a parade of what they have bought and built not of what they have filched from others. You never see the presents given to a parliamentary lawyer. What you see are the honors which he obtains for his children and the families they marry into. Nobody puts his income on show, only his possessions. The profit we possess after study is to have become better and wiser. As Epicurus said, that which sees and hears is our understanding. It is our understanding which benefits all, which arranges everything, which acts, which is master, and which reigns. We indeed make it into a slave and a coward by not leaving it free to do anything of itself. Which tutor ever asks his pupil what he thinks about rhetoric or grammar or this or that statement of Cicero? They build them into our memory, paneling and all, as though they were oracles in which letters and symbols constitute the actual substance. Knowing something does not mean knowing it by heart. That simply means putting it in the larder of our memory. That which we rightly know can be deployed without looking back at the model, without turning our eyes back towards the book. What a wretched ability it is which is purely and simply bookish. Book learning should serve as an ornament, not as a foundation. Following the conclusion of Plato that true philosophy consists in resoluteness, faithfulness, and purity, whereas the other sciences which have aims are merely cosmetic. Take Pavel and Pompeo, those excellent dancing masters, when I was young. I would like to have seen them teaching us our steps just by watching them without budging from our seats. Like those teachers who seek to give instruction to our understanding without making it dance, or to have seen others teach us how to manage a horse, a pike, or a lute, or to sing without practice, as these fellows do who want to teach us to judge well and to speak well, but who never gives us exercises in judging or speaking. Yet for such an apprenticeship, everything we can serve as an excellent book, some cheating by a page, some stupidity on the part of a lackey, something said at table, all supply new material. For this purpose, mixing with people is wonderfully appropriate. So are visits to foreign lands, but not the way the French nobles do it, but mainly learning of the humors of those peoples and of their manners, and knocking off our corners by rubbing our brains against other peoples. I would like pupils to be taken abroad from their tenderest years, mainly to any neighboring peoples whose languages, being least like our own, are ones which our tongue cannot get round unless you start bending it young. And besides, it is a universally received opinion that it is not sensible to bring up a boy in the lap of his parents. Natural affection makes parents too soft, too indulgent, even the wisest of them. They are incapable of either punishing his faults or of bringing him up as roughly and as dangerously as he ought to be. They could not bear to see him riding back from his training all dirty and sweaty, drinking this hot, drinking that cold, nor to see him on a fractious horse or up against a tough opponent, ball in hand, nor with his first arquebus. But there is no other prescription. Anyone who wants to be absolutely certain of making a real man of him must not spare his youth and must frequently flout the laws of medicine. Let him camp in the open amidst war's alarms. Nor is it enough to toughen up his soul. You must also toughen up his muscles. The soul is too hard pressed if she is not seconded. She has too much to do herself to think of taking on the duties of both. I know how my own soul groans in her fellowship with a body so soft and sensitive to pain and which relies too heavily on her, and I have noticed in my reading that in their writings my moral guides pass off as examples of greatness of soul or strength of mind things which really belong to a tough skin or to strong bones. I have known men, women, and children who are so constituted that a good beating means less to them than a pinch does to me, and who stir neither tongue nor eyebrow under the blows. When athletes play the philosopher in endurance, it is strength of muscle rather than strength of mind. Now, learning to endure toil is learning to endure pain. Toil puts calluses on our minds against pain. Pain and discomfort in training are needed to break him in for the pain and discomfort of dislocated joints, of the stone and of contusings, and of dungeons and tortures as well, for seeing the times we live in, those two may concern the good man as much as the bad. We are experiencing that now. Whoever bears arms against law threatens the best of men with the cat o' nine tails and the rope. And then the authority of the tutor, which must be sovereign for the boy, is hampered and interrupted by the presence of his parents. Add to which the respect paid to the boy by his household and his awareness of the resources and dignity of his family are not, in my opinion, trivial disadvantages at that particular age. Yet in the school of conversation among men I have often noticed a perversion. Instead of learning about others, we labor only to teach them about ourselves and are more concerned to sell our own wares than to purchase new ones. In our commerce with others, silence and modesty are most useful qualities. Train the lad to be sparing and reticent about his accomplishments, and he will not take umbrage when unlikely tales and daft things are related in his presence, for it is unmannerly and impolite to criticize everything which is not to our liking. Let him be satisfied with correcting himself without being seen to reproach others for doing things he would not do himself, and without flouting public morality. One should be wise without ostentation or ill will. Let him shun any semblance or impolitely laying down the law, as well as that puerile ambition to wish to appear clever by being different or to earn a name for criticizing or flaunting novelties. It is only appropriate for great poets freely to break the rules of poetry. Similarly, it is intolerable for any but great and illustrious souls to give themselves unaccustomed prerogatives. Although Socrates and Aristippus sometimes flouted normal rules and customs, one should not feel free to do the same. They obtain that privilege by qualities great and sublime. The boy will be taught not to get into a discussion or a quarrel except when he finds a sparring partner worth wrestling with, and even then not to employ all the holds which might help him, but merely those which help him most. Teach him a certain refinement in sorting out and selecting his arguments, with an affection for relevance and so for bravery. Above all, let him be taught to throw down his arms and surrender to truth as soon as he perceives it, whether that truth is born at his rival's doing or within himself from some change in his ideas. He will never be up in a pulpit reading out some prescribed text. He only has to defend a case when it has his approbation. He is not going to take up the kind of profession in which freedom to think again or to admit mistakes has been traded for ready cash. He is under no obligation to support all precepts and assertions. If the tutor's complexion is like mine, he will do so form the will of the boy that he will become a loyal subject of his monarch as well as a devoted and brave one. But he will throw cold water on any desire to be attached to him except through public service. Apart from several other disadvantages which cripple our freedom, When a man's judgment is pledged and purchased by private obligations, either it is partial and less free, or else he can be taxed with unwisdom and ingratitude. A courtier can have neither the right to speak nor the desire to think other favorably of a master who from among so many thousands of his subjects has chosen to favor him with his own hand and to elevate him. Not unreasonably, such favor and preferment will corrupt his freedom and dazzle him. That is why what that lot have to say on the topic is habitually at variance with all others in the state, and little to be trusted. As for our pupil's talk, let his virtue and his sense of right and wrong shine through it, and have no guide but reason. Make him understand that confessing an error which he discovers in his own argument, even when he alone has noticed it, is an act of justice and integrity, which are the main qualities he pursues. Stubbornness and rancor are vulgar qualities, visible in common souls, whereas to think again, to change one's mind, and to give up a bad case in the heat of the argument are rare qualities showing strength and wisdom. When in society, the boy will be told to keep his eyes open. I find that the front seats are normally taken as a right by the less able men, and the great inherited wealth is hardly ever associated with ability, while at the top end of the table the talk was about the beauty of a tapestry or the bouquet of the Malmsey. I have known many witty remarks at the other end pass unnoticed. He will sound out the capacity of each person, of a herdsman, a mason, a wayfarer. He must use what he can get. Take what a man has to sell and see that nothing goes wasted. Even other people's stupidity and weakness serve to instruct him. By noting each man's endowments and habits, there will be engendered in him a desire for the good ones and a contempt for the bad. Put into his mind a decent, careful spirit of inquiry about everything. He will go and see anything nearby which is of singular quality, a building, a fountain, a man, the site of an old battle, a place which Caesar or Charlemagne passed through. What land is benumbed with the cold, which dusty with heat, which favorable winds blow sails toward Italian coasts. He will inquire into the habits, means, and alliances of various monarchs, things most pleasant to study and most useful to know. In his commerce with men, I mean him to include, and that principally, those who live only in the memory of books. By means of history, he will frequent those great souls of former years. If you want it to be so, history could be a waste of time. It can also be, if you want it to be, a study bearing fruit beyond price. The only study, Plato said, which the Spartans kept as their share. Under this heading, what profit will he not get out of reading the lives of our favorite Plutarch? But let our tutor remember the object of his trust, which is less to stamp the date of the fall of Carthage on the boy as the behavior of Hannibal and Scipio, less to stamp the name of the place where Marcellus died, as how his death there showed him unworthy of his task. Let him not so much learn what happened as judge what happened. That is, you ask me, is the subject to which our wits are applied in the most diverse of manners. I have read hundreds of things in Livy which another has not found there. Plutarch found in him hundreds of things which I did not see. For some, Livy is purely a grammatical study. For others, he is philosophy dissected, penetrating into the most abstruse parts of our nature. There are in Plutarch developed treatises very worth knowing, for he is, to my mind, the master craftsman at that job. But there are also hundreds of points which he simply touches on. He merely flicks his fingers toward the way we should go if we want to, or at times he contents himself with a quick shot at the liveliest parts of the subject. Those passages we must rip out and put out on display. For example, that one saying of his, that the inhabitants of Asia were slaves of one tyrant because they were incapable of pronouncing one syllable. No, may have furnished La Beauté with the matter and moment of his book De la Servitude Volontaire. Seeing Plutarch select a minor action in the life of a man or an apparently unimportant saying is worth a treatise in itself. It is a pity that intelligent men are so fond of brevity. By it their reputation is certainly worth all the more, but we are worth all the less. Plutarch would rather we vaunted his judgment than his knowledge, and he would rather leave us craving for more than bloated. He realized that you could say too much even on a good subject, and that Alexandridas rightly criticized the orator whose address to the Ephors was good but too long, saying, O stranger, you say what you should, but not the way that you should. People whose bodies are too thin, pad them down. Those whose matter is too slender, pad it out too with words. Frequent commerce with the world can be an astonishing source of light for a man's judgment. We are all cramped and confined inside ourselves. We can see no further than the end of our noses. When they asked Socrates where he came from, he did not say, from Athens, but from the world. He, whose thoughts were fuller and wider, embraced the universal world as his city, scattered his acquaintances, his fellowship, and his affections through the whole human race, not as we do, who only look at what lies right in front of us. When frost attacks the vines in my village, my parish priest talks of God being angry against the human race. In his judgment, the cannibals are already dying of the croup. At the sight of our civil wars, who fails to exclaim that the world is turned upside down and that the day of judgment has got us by the throat, forgetting that many worse events have been known in the past and that in thousands of parts of the world they are still having a final time. Personally, I am surprised that our ways turn out to be so mild and gentle, given their unpunished lasciviousness. When the hail beats down on your head, the entire hemisphere seems stormy and tempestuous, like that peasant of the Savoy who said that if only that silly king of France had known how to use his luck properly, he could have become the Duke's chief steward eventually. His mind could not conceive of any degree of grandeur above that of his Duke. We are all caught in that same error without realizing it, a harmful error of great consequence. Only a man who can picture in his mind the mighty idea of Mother Nature in her total majesty, who can read in her countenance a variety so general and so unchanging, and then pick out therein not merely himself, but an entire kingdom as a tiny, faint point. Only he can reckon things at their real size. This great world of ours is the looking glass in which we must gaze to come to know ourselves from the right slant. To sum up then, I wanted to be the book which our pupils study. Such a variety of humors, schools of thought, opinions, laws, and customs teach us to judge sanely of our own and teach our judgment to acknowledge its shortcomings and natural weaknesses. And that is no light apprenticeship. So many revolutions, so many changes in the fortune of a state teach us to realize that our own fortune is no great miracle. So many names, so many victories and conquests lie buried in oblivion, make it ridiculous to hope that we shall immortalize our names by rounding up 10 armed brigades or by storming some hen house or other known only by its capture. The proud arrogance of so many other nations, pomp and the high-flown majesty of the grandeur of so many courts strengthen our gaze to look firmly and assuredly, without blinking at the brilliance of our own. So many millions upon millions of men dead and buried before us encourage us not to be afraid of going to join such a goodly company in the world to come, and so on. Our life, said Pythagoras, is like the vast throng assembled for the Olympic Games. Some use their bodies there to win fame, From the contest, others come to trade to make a profit, still others, and they are by no means the worst, seek no other gain than to be spectators. Seeing how everything is done and why, they watch how other men live so that they can judge and regulate their own lives. All the profitable treatises of philosophy can be properly reduced to examples. Teach the boy this, what he may justly wish for, that money is hard to earn and should be used properly, the extent of our duty to our country and to our dear ones, what God orders you to be, and what place he has assigned to you in the scheme of things, what we are and what we shall win when we have overcome. Teach him what knowing and not knowing means, what valor is and justice and temperance, what difference there is between ordinate and subordinate aspirations, slavery and due subordination, license and liberty. What are the signs of true and solid happiness? How far we should fear death, pain, and shame. How we can flee from hardships and how we can endure them. What principles govern our emotions and the physiology of so many and diverse stirrings within us? For it seems to me that the first lessons which we should irrigate his mind should be those which teach him to know himself and to know how to die and to live. Among the liberal arts, start with the art which produces liberal men. All of them are of some service in the regulation and practice of our lives, just as everything else is. But let us select the one which leads there directly and professes to do so. If we knew how to restrict our lives appurtenance to their right and natural limits, we would discover that the greater part of the arts and sciences as now practiced are of no practical use to us, and that even in those which are useful, there are useless wastes and chasms which we would do better to leave where they are. Following what Socrates taught, we should set limits to our study of subjects which lack utility. Dare to be wise. Start now. To put off the moment when you will start to live justly is to act like the bumpkin who would cross but who waits for the steam to dry up. Time flows and will flow forever, as in ever-rolling steam. What influences stem from Pisces and the lively constellation of Leo, or from Capricorn, which plunges into the Caspian Sea? Writing to Anaximenes, Pythagoras asked, what mind am I supposed to bring to the secrets of the heavens, having death and slavery every present before my eyes? We could all ask the same. Assaulted as I am by ambition, covetous, rashness, and superstition, and having such enemies to life as that within me, should I start wondering about the motions of the universe? Only after showing the boy what will make him a wiser and a better man will you explain to him the elements of logic, physics, geometry, and rhetoric. Since his judgment has already been formed, he will soon get to the bottom of any science he chooses. His lessons will sometimes be discussion, sometimes reading from books. At times the tutor will provide him with extracts from authors suited to his purpose. At others the tutor will pick out the marrow and chew it over for him. If the tutor is not sufficiently familiar with those books to find the discourses in them which serve his purposes, you could associate with him a scholar who could furnish them, as the need arises, with material for him to arrange and dispense to the growing boy. Who can doubt that such lessons will be more natural and easy than those in Theodore Gaza, whose precepts are prickly and nasty, and whose words are hollow and fleshless, with nothing to get hold of or to quicken the mind? Here then is nourishment for the soul to bite on. The fruit is incomparably more plentiful and will ripen sooner. Oddly, things have now reached such a state that even among men of intelligence, philosophy means something fantastical and vague, without value or usefulness, both in opinion and practice. The cause lies in chop logic, which has captured all of the approaches. It is a great mistake to portray philosophy with a haughty, frowning, terrifying face, or as inaccessible to the young. Whoever claps that wan and frightening mask on her face? There is nothing more lovely, more happy and gay, I almost said more amorously playful. What she preaches is all feast and fun. A sad and gloomy mind shows you have mistaken her address. Some philosophers were sitting together in the temple at Delphi one day. Either I am mistaken, said Demetrius, the grammarian, or your calm, happy faces show that you are not having an important discussion. One of them, Heracleon of Megara, retorted, furrowed brows are for grammarians, telling us whether Balo makes two is in the future researching into the derivation of the comparatives Chiron and Belchon, and of the superlatives Kerston and Bellston. Philosophical discussions habitually make men happy and joyful, not frowning and sad. You can detect in a sickly body the hidden torments of the mind. You can detect her joys as well. The face reflects them both. The soul which houses philosophy must by her own sanity make for a sound body. Her tranquillity and ease must glow from her. She must fashion her outward bearing to her mold, arming it therefore with gracious pride, a sprightly active demeanor, and a happy welcoming face. The most express sign of wisdom is unruffled joy. Like all in the realms above the moon, her state is ever serene. Baracco and Paralypton have devotees reeking of filth and smoke. She does not. They know her merely by hearsay. Why, her task is to make the tempest of the soul serene, and to teach hunger and fever how to laugh, not by imaginary epicycles, but by reasons, natural and palpable. Her aim is virtue which is not perched on the summit of a steep mountain, rough and inaccessible. Those who have drawn nigh her hold that on the contrary she dwells on a beautiful plateau, fertile and strewn with flowers. From there she clearly sees all things beneath her. But if you know the road, you can happily make your own way there by shaded grassy paths, flower scented, smooth and gentle rising, like tracks in the vaults of heaven. The highest virtue is fair, triumphant, loving, as delightful as she is courageous, a professed and implacable foe to bitterness, unhappiness, fear, and constraint, having nature for guide, fortune and pleasure for her companions. Those who frequent her not have, after her own weaknesses, fashioned an absurd portrait of her, sad, shrill, sullen, threatening, and glowering, perching her on a rocky peak, all on her own among the brambles, a spectre to terrify people. This tutor of mine, who knows that his duty is to fill the will of his pupil with at least as much love as reverence for virtue, will know how to tell him that our poets are following commonplace humors. He will make him realize that the gods place sweat on the paths to the chambers of Venus rather than Pallas. And when he comes to know his own mind and is faced with a choice between Bradamante to court and enjoy of Angelica, one with her natural beauty, active, noble, virile, though not mannish, contrasting with the other's beauty, soft, dainty, delicate in all artifice, the one distinguished as a youth with a shining helmet on her head, the other robed as a maiden with pearls in her headdress. Then his very passion will be deemed manly if he chooses flat contrary to the effeminate Phrygian shepherd. The tutor will then be teaching him a new lesson. What makes true virtue highly valued is the ease, usefulness, and pleasure we find in being virtuous. So far from it being difficult, children can be virtuous as well as adults, the simple as well as the clever. The means virtue uses is control, not effort. Socrates, the foremost of her darlings, deliberately renounced effort so as to glide along with her easy, natural progress. She is a mother who nurtures human pleasures. By making them just, she makes them sure and pure. By making them moderate, they never pant for breath or lose their savor. By cutting away those which she denies us, she sharpens our appreciation of those she leaves us. An abundance of those which satiated, but until we are satisfied, if virtue should lack the ordinary share of good fortune, she evades or does without it, or or else she forges a private happiness of her own, neither floating nor changeable. She knows how to be rich, powerful, and learned, and how to lie on a perfumed couch. She does not love life. She does not love beauty, renown, and health. But her peculiar office is to know how to enjoy those good things with proper moderation, and how to lose them with constancy. An office much more noble than grievous. Without it, the whole course of our life becomes unnatural, troubled, deformed. Then you can indeed tire to those rocky paths, those brambles, and those spectres. Were our pupil's disposition so bizarre that he would rather hear a tall story than the account of a great voyage or a wise discussion, that at the sound of the drum calling the youthful ardor of his comrades to arms, he would turn aside for the drum of a troop of jugglers, that he would actually find it no more delightful and pleasant to return victorious, covered with the dust of battle, than after winning a prize for tennis or dancing. Then I know no remedy except that his tutor should quickly strangle him when nobody is looking, or apprentice him to make fairy cakes in some goodly town, even if he were the heir of a duke, following Plato's precept that functions should be allocated not according to the endowments of men's fathers, but the endowments of their souls. Since philosophy is the art which teaches us how to live, and since children need to learn it as much as we do at other ages, why do we not instruct them in it? The clay is soft and malleable. Quick, hurry to fashion it on the potter's wheel, which is forever spinning. They teach us to live when our life is over. Dozens of students have caught the pox before they reach the lesson on temperance in their Aristotles. Cicero said that even were he to live 2 men's lives, he would never find enough time to study the lyric poets. I find these chop logic merchants even more gloomily useless. Our boy is too busy for that. To school learning he owes but the first 15 or 16 years of his life. The rest is owed to action. Let us employ a time so short on things which it is necessary to know. Get rid of those thorny problems of dialects. They are trivial. Our lives are never amended by them. Take these simple arguments of philosophy. Learn how to select the right ones and to apply them. They are easier to grasp than a tale in Bacchusale. A boy can do it as soon as he leaves his nanny. It is much easier than learning to read and write. Philosophy has arguments for man at birth as well as in senility. I share Plutarch's conviction that Aristotle never spent much of the time of his great pupil Alexander on the art of syllogisms, nor on the principle of geometry. He taught him rather sound precepts concerning valor, prowess, greatness of soul, and temperance, as well as that self-assurance which fears nothing. With such an armory he sent him still a child to conquer the empire of the world with merely 30,000 foot soldiers, 4,000 horsemen, and 42,000 crowds. As for the other arts and sciences, Plutarch says that he held them in esteem, praising their excellence and their nobility. But whatever pleasure he found in them, he did not allow himself to be surprised by a desire to practice them himself. Seek here, young men and old, a lasting purpose for your mind, and a provision for white-haired wretchedness. That is what Epicurus says at the beginning of his letter to Meniscus. Let the younger not reject philosophy, nor the older tire of it. Whoever does otherwise seems to be saying that the season for living happily has not yet come, or it's already past. Despite all this, I do not want to imprison the boy. I do not want him to be left to the melancholy humor of a furious schoolmaster. I do not want to corrupt his mind as others do by making his work a torture, slaving away for 14 or 15 hours a day like a porter. When you see him over devoted to studying his books because of a solitary or melancholy complexion, it would not be good, I find, to encourage him in it. It unfits boys for mixing in polite society and distracts them from better things to do. And how many men have I known in my time made as stupid as beasts by an indiscreet hunger for knowledge? Carneades was turned so mad by it that he could not find time to tend to his hair or his nails. Not do I wish to have his noble manners ruined by the uncouthness or barbarity of others. In antiquity, French wisdom was proverbially good at the outset, but lacking in staying power. And truly, still now, nothing is more gentlemanly than little French children, but they normally deceive the hopes placed in them, being in no ways outstanding once they are grown up. I have heard men of wisdom maintain that it is those colleges which parents send children to, and we have them in abundance, which make them so stupid. For our boy, any place and any time can be used to study. His room, a garden, his table, his bed, when alone or in company, morning and evening. His chief study will be philosophy, that former or good judgment and character who was privileged to be concerned with everything. It was an orator, Isocrates, who, being begged to talk about his art at a feast, replied, "What I can do, this is no time for. What this is a time for, I cannot do. To present harangues and rhetorical debates to a company gathered for laughter and good cheer would be to mix together things too discordant. You can say the same of all the other disciplines, but out of that part of philosophy which treats of man, his tasks and his duties, by the common consent of all the wise, she should not be barred from sports nor feastings, seeing that commerce with her is sweet. And Plato having invited her to his banquet, we can see how she entertained the guests in a relaxed manner, appropriate to time and place, even when treating one of her most sublime and most salutary things. She is equally helpful to the poor and the rich. Neglect her, and she equally harms the young and the old. In this way, he will certainly life follow, much less than do others. Now, we can take 3 times as many steps strolling about a long gallery and still feel less tired than on a walk to a definite goal. So too our lessons will slip by unnoticed if we apparently happen upon them, as restricted to neither time nor place. They intermingle with all our activities. The games and sports themselves will form a good part of his studies: racing, wrestling, music making, dancing, hunting, and the handling of arms and horses. I want his outward graces, his social ease, and his physical dexterity to be molded step by step with his soul. We are not bringing up a soul. We are bringing up a body. We are bringing up a man. We must not split him into two. We must not bring up one without the other, but, as Plato said, lead them abreast like a pair of horses harnessed together to the same shaft. And does not Plato, when you listen to him, appear to devote more time and care to exercising the body, convinced that the mind may be exercised with the body, but not vice versa? This education is to be conducted, moreover, with a severe gentleness, not as it usually is. Instead of children being invited to letters as guests, all they are shown in truth are cruelty and horror. Get rid of violence and force. As I see it, nothing so fundamentally stultifies and bastardizes a well-born nature. If you want the boy to loathe disgrace and punishment, do not harden him to them. Harden him to sweltering heat and to cold, to wind and sun, and to such dangers as he must learn to treat with contempt. Rid him of all softness and delicacy about dress and about sleeping, eating and drinking. Get him used to anything. Do not turn him into a pretty boy or a lady's boy but into a boy who is fresh and vigorous. Boy, man, and now old man. I have always thought this, but I have always disliked, among other things, the way our colleges are governed. Their failure would have been less harmful, perhaps, if they had lent toward indulgence. They are a veritable goal for captive youth. By punishing boys for depravity before they are depraved, you make them so. Go there during lesson time. You will hear nothing but the screaming of tortured children and of masters drunk with rage. What a way to awaken a taste for learning in those tender, timorous souls, driving them to it with terrifying scowls and fists armed with canes, an iniquitous and permanent system, and besides, such imperious authority can lead to dreadful consequences, especially given our form of flogging. How much more appropriate to strew their classrooms with leaf and flower than with blood-stained birch rods. I would have portraits of happiness there and joy with Flora and the Graces, as Specupus the philosopher did in his school. When they have something to gain, make it enjoyable. Health-giving food should be sweetened for a child. Harmful ones made to taste nasty. It is amazing how concerned Plato is in his laws with the amusements and pastimes of the youths of his city, and how he dwells on their races, sports, singing, capering, and dancing, the control and patronage of which has been entrusted, he said, in antiquity to the gods, to Apollo, the Muses, and Minerva. His care extends to over 100 precepts for his gymnasia, yet he spends little time over book learning. The only thing he seems specifically to recommend poetry for is the music. In our manners and behavior, any strangeness and oddness are to be avoided as enemies of easy mixing in society, and as monstrosities. Who would not have been deeply disturbed by Alexander Stuart Demophon, whose complexion made him sweet, and in the shade, and shiver in the sun? I have known men who fly from the smell of apples rather than from gunfire, others who are terrified of a mouse, who vomit as the sight of cream or when a feather mattress is shaken up. Some occult property may be involved in this, but if you ask me, if you set about it young enough, you could stamp it out. One victory my education has achieved over me is that my appetite can be brought to accept without distinction any of the things people eat and drink except beer. While the body is still supple, it should, for that very reason, be made pliant to all manners and customs, provided that he can restrain his appetites and to all manners and his will. You should not hesitate to make the young man suited to all peoples and companies, even should the need arise to immoderation and excess. His practice should conform to custom. He should be able to do anything but want to do only what is good. I would want him to outstrip his fellows in vigor and firmness even during the carousing, and that he should refrain from wrongdoing, not because he lacks strength or knowledge, but because he does not want to do it. Meltum interest otrum precar aliquis nolet aut nesciat. There is a great difference between not wanting to do evil and not knowing how to. My intention was to honor a nobleman who is as far removed from such excesses as any man in France when I asked him in the presence of guests how many times in his life he had had to get drunk while serving the king in Germany. He took it in the right spirit and said he had done it 3 times, and he told me about them. I have often noted with great astonishment the extraordinary character of Alcibiades, who, without impairing his health, could so readily adapt to diverse manners. At times he could outdo Persians in pomp and luxury, at others Spartans in austerity and frugal living. He was a reformed man in Sparta, yet equally pleasure-seeking in Ionia. Thus would I fashion my pupil, one who is patiently clad in rags, yet could also adapt to the opposite extreme, playing both roles becomingly. Him I will admire. Such are my lessons, for him who draws most profit from them, and they are acts, not facts. To see his deeds is to hear his word, to hear his word is to see his deeds. God forbid, says someone in Plato, that philosophy should mean learning a lot of things and then talking about the arts. The fullest art of all, that of living good lives, they acquired more from life than from books. Prince Leon of the Phlesians inquired of Heracles of Pontus which art or science he professed. I know none of them, he replied. I am a philosopher. Diogenes was reproached for being ignorant yet concerned with philosophy. My concern is all the more appropriate, he replied. When Hecystus begged him to read a certain book, he replied, how amusing of you! You prefer real figs to painted ones, so why not true and natural deeds to written ones? My pupil will not say his lesson, he will do it. He will rehearse his lessons in his actions. You will see whether he is wise in what he takes on, good and just in what he does, gracious and sound in what he says, resilient in illness, modest in his sports, temperate in his pleasures, indifferent to the taste of his food, be it fish or flesh, wine or water, orderly in domestic matters, as a man who knows how to make his education into a rule of life, not a means of showing off, who can control himself and obey his principles. The true mirror of our discourse is the course of our lives. To a man who asked him why the Spartans never drew up written rules of bravery and gave them to their children, Zextimus replied that they wished to accustom them to deeds, not words. After 15 or 16 years, compare with that one of our college Latinisers who has spent precisely as long simply learning to talk. The world is nothing but chatter. I have never met a man who does not say more than he should rather than less. Yet half of our life is spent on that. They keep us 4 or 5 years learning the meaning of words and stringing them into sentences, 4 or 5 more in learning how to arrange them into a long composition, divided into 4 parts or 5, then as many again in plating and weaving them into verbal subtleties. Let us leave all that to those who make it their express profession. When I was traveling to Orleans one day, on the plain this side of Clary, I met 2 college tutors who were coming from Bordeaux. There was about 50 yards between them. I could also make out some troops further away, still led by the officer. One of my men asked the first of these tutors who was that gentleman coming behind him. The tutor had not noticed the party following behind him and thought they were talking about his companion. He is not a gentleman, he amusingly replied, but a grammarian, and I am a logician. Now, we who, on the contrary, are trying to form a gentleman, not a grammarian or a logician, should let them waste their own time. We have business to do elsewhere, provided that our student be well furnished with things. Words will follow only too easily. If they do not come easily, then he can drag them out slowly. I sometimes hear people who apologize for not being able to say what they mean, maintaining that their heads are so full of fine things that they cannot deliver them for want of eloquence. That is moonshine. Do you know what I think? It is a matter of shadowy notions coming to them from some unformed concepts which they are unable to untangle and to clarify in their minds. Consequently, they cannot deliver them externally. They themselves do not yet know what they mean. Just watch them giving a little stammer as they are about to deliver their brainchild. You can tell that they have laboring pains, not at childbirth, but during conception. They are merely licking an imperfect lump into shape. For my part, I maintain, as Socrates is decisive, that whoever has one clear living thought in his mind will deliver it even in Bergamask, or if he is dumb, he will do so by signs. Once you have mastered the things, the words will come freely. And as another said, just as poetically through in prose, when things have taken hold of the mind, the words come in crowding forth. And another one, the things themselves ravish the words. But he does not know what an ablative is, a conjunctive, a substantive. He knows no grammar. Neither does his footman or a petit pont fishwife. Yet they will talk you to death if you let them, and will probably no more stumble over the rules of their own dialect than the finest master of arts in France. But he knows no rhetoric, nor how to compose an opening captitio benevolente for his gentle reader. He does not need to know that. All those fine colors of rhetoric are in fact easily eclipsed by the light of pure and naive youth. Those elegant techniques merely serve to entertain the masses who are unable to take heavier solid meat. Ambassadors from Samos came to King Cleomens of Sparta with a long prepared speech to persuade him to go to war against Polycrates, the tyrant. He let them have their say and then replied, "As for your preamble and preface, I no longer remember it, nor of course your middle bit. As for your conclusion, I will do none of it. An excellent answer, it seems to me, with a blow on the nose of those speechifiers. And what about this other case? The Athenians had to choose between two architects to take charge of a large building project. The first one was the more fly and presented himself with a fine prepared speech about the job to be done. He won the favor of the common people. The other architect merely spoke 2 or 3 words. Gentlemen of Athens, what he said I will do. At the height of his eloquence, Cicero moved many into ecstasies of astonishment. But Cato merely laughed. "Quite an amusing counsel we have," he said. Now a useful saying or a pithy remark is always welcome wherever it is put, but it is not good in the context of what comes before or after it. It is good in itself. I am not one of those who hold that good scansion makes a good poem. Let the poet lengthen a short syllable if he wants to. That simply does not count. If the invention of his subject matter is happy, and if his wit and judgment have done their jobs, then I shall say, good poet but bad versifier. Take his work and pull each measured verse apart at the seams. Take away rhythm and measure, change the order of the words, putting the first last and the last first. You will still find the poet in those scattered remains. He will not believe himself for all that. Even bits of it will be beautiful. That is what Menander replied when the day came for his promised comedy, and people chided him for not yet putting it in hand. It is already composed, he said. All I have to do is put it into verse. Having thought the things through and arranged them in his mind, he attached little importance to the remainder. Since Ronsard and Du Bellay have brought renown to our French poetry, every little apprentice I know is doing more or less as they do, using noble words and copying their cadences, more than less. Ordinary people think there never have been so many poets, but easy as it has proved to copy their rhythms, they all fall short when it comes to imitating the rich descriptions of the one and the delicate invention of the other. Yes, But what will he do when they harass him with some sophisticated syllogistic subtlety? Bacon makes you drink. Drinking quenches your thirst. Therefore, bacon quenches your thirst. Let him simply laugh at it. It is cleverer to laugh at it than to answer it. Or let him borrow Aristippus's amusing rejoinder. Why should I unravel that? It is bad enough all knotted up. Someone challenged Clintus with diabolical trickeries. Chrysippus said to him, "Go and play those conjuring tricks on children. Do not interrupt the serious thoughts of a grown-up." If this verbal jugglery, these contorted prickly sophisms, should persuade him to accept an untruth, that is dangerous. But if they do not result in action and simply move him to laughter, I really do not see why he should pay attention to them. Some people are so daft that they will go a mile or so out of their way to hunt for a good word. They do not fit words to things, but look for irrelevant things to fit to their words. Or again, there are authors who are led by the beauty of some attractive word to write what they never intended. I myself am more ready to distort a fine saying in order to patch it onto me than to distort the thread of my argument to go in search of one. It is, on the contrary, for words to serve and to follow. If French cannot get there, let Gaston do so. I want things to dominate, so filling the thoughts of the hearer that he does not even remember the words. I like the kind of speech which is simple and natural, the same on paper as on lip, speech which is rich in matter, scenery, brief and short, not so much titivated and refined as forceful and brusque. The good style of speaking is the kind which strikes home, gnomic rather than diffuse, formed from affection, uneven, disjointed, and bold. Let each bit form a unity, not schoolmasterly, not monkish, not legalistic, but soldierly. Rather, as Sallust described Julius Caesar's, I like to imitate the unruly negligence shown by French youth in the way they are seen to wear their clothes, with their mantles bundled round their neck, their capes tossed over one shoulder, or with a stocking pulled awry. It manifests a pride contemptuous of the mere externals of dress and indifferent to artifice. But I find it even better applied to speech. All affection is unbecoming in a courtier, especially given the haughty freedom of the French, and under a monarchy every gentleman is inevitably schooled in court matters, so we do well to lean towards the careless and natural. I have no love for textures where the joints and seams all show. Speech devoted to truth should be straightforward and plain. Who can speak carefully unless he wants to sound effective? When eloquence draws attention to itself, it does wrong by the substance of things. Just as in dress it is the sign of a petty mind to seek to draw attention by some personal or unusual fashion, so too in speech. The search for new expressions and little-known words derives from an adolescent schoolmasterish ambition. If only I could limit myself to words used in Les Halles in Paris, that grammarian Astrophanes did not know the first thing about it when he criticized Epicurus for his simple words and for having perspicuity of language as his sole rhetorical aim. To imitate speech is easy. An entire nation can do it. To imitate judgment and the research for your material takes rather more time. Most readers think similar styles when they find them clothe similar bodies. But you cannot borrow strength or sinews. You can borrow mantles and finery. Most of the people who haunt my company talk like these essays. I cannot tell whether they think like them. Athenians take copious and elegant speech as their share. Spartans, brevity. Cretans, fecundity of thought, not speech, and they are the best. Zeno said that they had two sorts of followers: those he termed philologus, who cared for real learning, and those he termed logophilos, whose concern was with words. That does not mean that speaking well is not a fine thing or a good thing, but that is not as good as we make it out to be. It irritates me that our life is taken up by it. I would prefer first to know my own language well, and then that of the neighbors with whom I have regular dealings. There is no doubt that Greek and Latin are fine and great accomplishments, but they are bought too dear. I will tell you a cheaper way of buying them. It was essayed on me. Anyone is welcome to use it. My late father, after having made all possible inquiries among the learned and the wise about the choicest form of education, was warned about the disadvantages of the current system. They told him that the length of time we spend learning languages, which cost the ancients nothing, is the sole reason why we cannot attain to the greatest of mind and knowledge of those old Greeks and Romans. I do not believe that this ought to be the sole reason. Nevertheless, the expedient found by my father was to place me, while still at the breast and before my tongue was untied, in the care of a German. He was totally ignorant of our language, but very well versed in Latin. He had been brought over expressly and engaged at a very high fee. He had me continuously on his hands. There were two others with him, less learned. Their task was to follow me about and provide him with some relief. They never addressed me in any other language but Latin. As for the rest of the household, it was an inviolable rule that neither he nor my mother, nor a manservant, nor a housemaid ever spoke in my presence anything except such words of Latin as they had learned in order to chatter a bit with me. It is wonderful how much they all got from it. My father and my mother learned in this way sufficient Latin to understand it, and acquired enough to be able to talk it when they had to, as did those other members of the household who were most closely devoted to my service. In short, we became so Latinized that it spilled over into the neighboring villages, where, resulting from this usage, you can still find several Latin names for tools and for artisans. As for me, I was 6 years old before I knew French any more than I knew the patos of Perigord or Arabic. And so, without art, without books, without grammar, without rules, without whips, and without tears, I had learned Latin as pure as that which my schoolmaster knew, for I had no means of corrupting it or contaminating it. So if they wanted me to essay writing a prose, they had to give me some bad Latin to turn into good. And Nicholas Grouchy, Guillaume, Guattez, George Buchan, that great Spanish poet, Marc-Antoine Mouret, whom France and Italy acknowledged to be the best prose writer in his day, who were my private tutors, have often told me that in my infancy I had language so fluent and so ready that they were afraid to approach me. Buchanan, whom I subsequently met in the retinue of the late Lord Michel De Montaigne, told me that he was writing a book on educating children and was taking my education as his model, for he was then the tutor of Count de Bressay, whom we have seen so valiant and brave. As for Greek, my father planned to have it taught to me as methodically, but in a new way, as a sort of game or sport. We would bounce declensions about, rather like those who use certain board games as a means of learning arithmetic and geometry. For among other things, he had been counseled to bring me to love knowledge and duty more by my own choice, without forcing my will, and to educate my soul entirely through gentleness and freedom. He was so meticulous about this that since some mountain that it disturbs the tender brains of children to wake them up with a start and to snatch them suddenly and violently out of their sleep. He would have me woken up by the sound of a musical instrument, and I was never without someone to do this for me. This example will suffice to judge all the rest by, and also to emphasize the wisdom and love of so good a father, who is by no means to be criticized because he harvested no fruits worthy of so choice a husbandry. There were two causes for that. First, my soul was ill-suited and barren, for though I enjoyed solid good health together with a quiet and amiable nature, I was, despite that, so heavy, passive, and dreamy that nobody could drive me out of my idleness, not even to make me play. Whatever I could perceive I saw well, and beneath my heavy complexion I nursed bold ideas as well as opinions old for my age. My mind was lazy and would only budge so long as it was led. I was slow to understand, and my inventiveness was slack. To top it all, my memory was incredibly unreliable. Considering all that, is no wonder that my father could make nothing of me. The second reason was as follows. Just as people who are frantic about finding a cure go and consult anybody, that good man was extremely frightened of failure in a matter which meant so much to him. He finally let himself be carried away by the common opinion. He fell in with standard practice and sent me at the age of 6 to the Collège des Garçons, then in full flourish as the best school in France. There too, it is impossible to exaggerate the trouble he took over choosing good personal tutors for me and over all the other details of my education, preserving several idiosyncrasies opposed to the usual practices of the college. But for all that, it was still school. My Latin was at once corrupted, and since then I have lost all use of it from lack of practice. And all my noble education merely served to enable me to stride right into the upper forms. I left college at 13, having completed the course, and in truth I now have nothing to show for it. My first taste for books arose from enjoying Ovid's Metamorphoses when I was about 7 or 8. I used to sneak away from all the other joys to read it, especially since Latin was my mother tongue, and the Metamorphoses was the easiest book I knew, and the one most suitable by its subject to my tender age. Juan de Bordeaux and so on, trashy books which children spend time on. I did not even know the titles, and I still do not know the insights, so exact was the way I was taught. This rendered me a bit slacker about studying my set books. I was particularly lucky at this stage to have to deal with an understanding tutor who ardently connived at this and other similar passions, for I read in succession Virgil, Terence, Plautus, and the Italian comedies, ever seduced by the attractiveness of the subjects. Had he been mad enough to break this succession, I reckon that I would have left school hating books, as most French aristocrats do. He acted most ingenuously. Pretending not to notice anything, he sharpened my appetite by making me devour such books in secret, while gently requiring me to do my duty by the other prescribed books. For the chief qualities which my father looked for in those who had charge of me were affability and an easy-going complexion, and my own complexion had no vices other than sluggishness and laziness. The risk was not that I should do wrong, but do nothing. Nobody forecast that I would turn out bad, only useless. What they foretold was idleness, not wickedness. I am aware that is the way things have turned out. The complaints which ring in my ears confirm it. Lazy, no warmth in his duties as friend, relation, or public official, too much on his own. Even the most insulting accusers never say, "Why did he go and take that?" or "Why has he never paid up?" What they say is, "Why will he not write it off?" or "Why will he not give it away?" I would consider it flattering if police found me wanting only in such works of supererogation. Where they are unjust is in requiring that I exceed my obligations more rigorously, indeed, than they require of themselves their mere fulfillment. By so requiring, they destroy the gratuitous nature of the deed, and therefore the gratitude which would be my due, whereas any active generosity on my part should be more highly appreciated. Seeing that I have never been the recipient of any, I am all the more free to dispose of my fortune in that it is thoroughly mine. Yet if I were a great burnisher up of my actions, I might well beat off such reproaches. I would teach some of those people that they are not annoyed because I do not do a lot for them, but because I could do a lot more. For all that, my soul was not wanting in powerful emotions of her own, nor in sure and open judgments about subjects which she knew, digesting them alone, without telling anyone else. Among other things, I truly believed that she was incapable of surrendering to force and violence. Should I include another of my characteristics as a child, I had an assured countenance and a suppleness of voice and gesture when I undertook to act in plays, far in advance of my age. The following year had scarcely plucked me from my 11th. I played the chief characters in the Latin tragedies of Buchanan, Gustierne, and Marais, which were put on in our College de Gaulle with dignity. In such matters, Andreas Gouverneur, our principal, was incomparably the best principal in France, as he was in all other aspects of his duties, and I was held to be a past master, acting in an activity which is not unpraiseworthy in the children of good families. I have subsequently seen our princes actively involved in it, and winning honor and praise. In Greece it was open even to gentlemen to make acting their profession. He disclosed his project to Ariston, the tragic actor, a gentleman respected for his birth and his fortune. His profession in no ways impaired this respect, since nothing like that is a source of shame among the Greeks. Those who condemn such entertainments have been accused of lack of perspicacity and of injustice. Those who deny entry into our goodly towns to worthwhile troops of actors, begrudging the people such public festivities. Good governments take the trouble to bring their citizens together and to assemble them for sports and games, just as they do for serious acts of worship. A sense of community and goodwill is increased by this, and you could not allow citizens any amusements better regulated than those which take place in the presence of all and in full view of the magistrate. I would find it reasonable that the magistrate or the monarch should occasionally offer such amusements to the people for nothing, with a kind of fatherly goodness and affection, and that in the bigger towns there should be places set aside and duly appointed for such spectacles, which would be a diversion from worse and secret goings-on. Now, to get back to my subject, there is nothing like tempting the boy to want to study and to love it. Otherwise, you simply produce donkeys laden with books. They are flogged into retaining a pennyful of learning, but if it is to do any good, learning must not only lodge with us, we must marry her.